any of our main people here. I thought, okay, maybe it's just me, or maybe they are suffering from power outages right now because this thunderstorm did roll through here, and it looked quite violent at times, but we'll start a recording. That way I can always make sure other people can get a hold of it. And let's see, is there any other things I need to turn on? Captions. Let's see. No, that's not the one I want. There, show captions. Yes, English. Good. Okay, good. All right. Well, I will have a recording that I can forward then to the powers that be and make sure that people have a copy of it. Any questions for open forum? We have open forum at the beginning of the meeting before I do the presentation. Anybody brought any questions with them? Dennis, you survived tax time?
Just barely. Just barely.
Well, I know you have an older laptop that you rely on for doing some of that stuff.
No, actually I have a Windows 10 laptop that I bought to do it, but I don't connect it to the internet other than to download the latest TurboTax and transmit up. So I don't do Windows 10 updates on it. That's all I do, but I just ran out of time. I got too much going on right now. I have to get replacement knee surgery in less than 2 months. Things are just popping all over the place that I'm trying to do for me and my brother. Hearing aid appointments, doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. I'm like running around with my head cut off, just trying to catch everything. Because I know afterward I can't do anything for a while.
Oh, I can identify with the doctor's appointments. I've had my share between my wife and I. We hit the tag rope and the other one goes in. Just about every week we have something now going on, but that just makes it interesting. They said, oh, we like those results. Now go do this test. So
I even had to get an authorization. I don't know if all surgeons are like this, but the knee guy, I had to get an authorization from my dentist today that I'm okay to have surgery. I don't have any infections or anything else. I also have to get an approval from my primary care. I had some scratching on my leg, and the doctor looked at it. He said, "Oh, I need an authorization from a dermatologist." I mean, it's crazy.
You need pre-op, and then after you have that kind of surgery, anytime you want to visit the dentist, you're going to have to take an antibiotic before you go.
You know, the hygienist told me that is often the case, but the doctor, the knee surgeon, he never said a word to me about that at all.
Oh, they tell you after the fact because the knee surgeon is the one who will prescribe the Cipro for you. Yeah, my wife had both hips done, and she has to do that every time she goes near the dentist. She's got to have a prescription and take that on the way to the dentist office.
Even for a cleaning?
Especially for a cleaning.
Really?
Anytime you're going to do any dental work, you have to take that as a preventative.
For how long?
Forever.
No, really?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Really? Yes. Go look it up. Go look it up. Oh, my God. Yes. Better to be informed than to be surprised.
Okay.
Just start.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions here?
Oh, well, I might as well ask one.
Sure.
So on the Windows 10 machine I have that I don't connect to the internet, at some point when I have to get a new machine, like when TurboTax stops supporting Windows 10 and I want to go either 11, I don't know if I want to try to upgrade or just buy a new machine. But how do I tell if I have, this was discussed maybe 6-8 months ago. How do I tell on that machine if I have that TMP chip thing?
You have to be connected to the internet, and in Windows Update, it will tell you whether or not your machine meets the criteria for Windows 11. You have to be able to support TPM 2.0.
Okay, so since I don't do Windows Update, there's no other way to tell that, right?
That with either that or you get the Windows 11 readiness utility, which you need to download from the internet anyway. Basically, it's the same thing. That tells Windows Update whether or not your machine is capable of doing it.
Put it on the search bar and put in tpm.msc, and it should come up and tell you whether you got TPM and what version.
Yeah.
Yeah, there also is a third-party tool. I think it's called Why Not 11. That'll give you the details.
Yeah. And let's see.
What
It
was that?
says you have trusted, it's ready to use, but it doesn't tell me what, oh, I'm 1.2 on this machine.
Who was that? Was that Harry who said the TPM?
Yeah, tpm.msc. Type it into the search box.
Okay. I'll try that.
Trusted Program Manager.msc, which is a way of extending the Windows command structure to support a pop-up. And the pop-up will then describe what you have, whether it's working or not, and what version you have.
Okay. I'll try that.
I'm assuming you already have, because it is a Windows 10 machine, it's running an Intel 6th or 7th generation or above. It'll be like an i5 60 something, 6000 series or 7000 series. The first number is usually the generation number, when it tells you what kind of chip processor you have.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's an i5.
Well, it's an i5. I have an i7 here, but I have an i7 second generation, so I don't qualify for Windows 11, even though this machine is probably bigger, faster, and stronger than many machines that are of newer generations.
Okay. Well, next time I log on, I'll log on to it. I'll jot all this stuff down in there. Okay.
Yeah.
They also are a little picky on the processors. I had the laptop I've got is only a couple of years old, and it has an i7, but it's not in the list of acceptable processors, so I couldn't put 11 on it.
Is it one of those little i7s that's only a dual core?
No,
If it's a laptop i7, sometimes those might not have enough moxie.
yeah, it's a Spectre HP, so it has one of the better processors, but it still wasn't listed as an acceptable one for some reason.
Do you have a 14-hour battery life with it?
And I wish it
Yeah.
advertised
if it,
10 hours, but there's no way. If we have a long,
it might not have the right number of cores. Yeah, that's why I asked.
I'm out of battery.
Yeah, if this machine, if I'm up for 2 hours after the power fails, it's a miracle. Okay, because it uses a lot of power, and my power adapter is one of the 200-watt power adapters.
Mine looks like
and it's warm.
Okay. If you want the rundown on whether your system is ready, and if not, why not, there is a utility called Why Not 11, and I posted the link in the chat.
Very good. Thank you.
Got it.
But some of these things it'll show you, you may or may not be able to fix.
Okay. Good things to know. Okay, Sanford, I am recording this to the cloud because I did not see our either Tim or any of the other officers meeting. So I thought, well, we'll try and do it this way.
He's giving a thumbs up.
Good. I thought maybe Bert is having power issues as well or something, or who knows what. So
I haven't seen Bert at several consecutive meetings. Don't know if that means anything. It is
Okay.
tax season. It is tax season. He may be
It
busy.
is tax season, yes, and that is usually highly stressful for people in his particular chosen business. Okay. Any other questions? Everybody else came with answers today, or they just want to see what the updates or thing is all about? Well, I can describe one of the things that caused me to go down this particular path with updates. It's also at the end of my presentation, but I'll refer to it now since I have some time. I have a one-touch, Vireo one-touch blood glucose meter, which connects via USB. And on the machine I used to connect and do this with was Win 7, and Win 7 became less and less supported with Win 10, and then Win 11 showing up, and I said, well, I have too many websites that don't load properly, especially banking sites with Chrome and Win 7. So I decided to transfer the flag to Win 10. And I figured I'm going to have to transfer this, the one-touch software that ran through USB to the Win 10 machine as well. And I had no problems. It went across there and it was perfectly fine. And once I had it up and running, it has this nuance. Every time there's a new version of the software that helps it communicate, AKA a driver-like facility between the USB port and the web interface so that it can post the information from my glucose meter onto the web. It would let me know, oh, you need to upgrade this. You need to upgrade the driver again. So if I click on it and update it. No, it's fine. Every time I'd update it, you know, it'd be something newer, faster, stronger. Who knows what it was, but it seemed to be insistent. It wanted to be updated. Well, I updated it this one time and then I couldn't find my meter anymore. I was like, why can't it find my meter? Is my meter broke or something like that? No. And I happened to notice, I initiated some trouble calls and said, did you do something? I noticed that I did an upgrade here and my meter is no longer transferring. And they asked me for a whole bunch of information, which I kept on sending back and forth through this email chain until I discovered down in the system tray when this thing was running, it had a number of options, including logging and restrict what devices to look for. And I go in there and I look and I can't find my device as one of the devices to look for. And I noticed I was now on version 5.00 and then a 5-digit number. I thought, this is version 5. I think I was on version 3 or 4 on the other computer. So I fired up the old computer, plugged in my glucose meter. Lo and behold, it worked fine. They had, by taking my meter out of the supported list, immediately obsoleting my blood glucose meter, and I was no longer able to transfer with the version of their driver. And they didn't happen to have old versions lying around of this transfer software. I happened to get lucky because when I moved the flag to my Win 10 machine 6 months earlier, I had saved a copy of the program by downloading it at that time, and that was version 4.8. Loaded 4.8 on top of the 5.0 driver, and it transferred fine. And since then, I finally told them what the problem was, and they said, oh yeah, it's obsolete. And I said, well, that's kind of nice that you obsoleted this thing that I just bought in 2019, and you said you were going to have a 7-year service life on this. I sort of expected I had some years to go on it. So they sent me a new meter. Yeah. I mean, that's the other way to deal with it. We're not going to support that old meter anymore. We'll just give you a new one. The new one does have a color display like the old one does, but it doesn't have rechargeable batteries. It just has the coin cells. One coin cell to run the meter, one coin cell to run the display. So now when the batteries die, I have to buy 2 of those CR2032 batteries and replace them in pairs and chew up batteries or whatever. Something to look forward to. I would have preferred to just stay with the rechargeable batteries, and that was working fine for me. Every time it would go down one notch, I'd just plug it in, charge her back up, and it was good for another month or so. Nope, not to be. But that's one of the things that you have to look out for if you have very specific stuff, especially with drivers for computer equipment. Anything that requires a machine interface and maybe JavaScript support to be able to upgrade, or if you want to transfer it to a new computer. Dennis, you mentioned going to a new computer. What happens if your video camera that you're using that's not built into the laptop and you want to transfer it to the new machine? Guess what? If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I had a similar type thing with print drivers as well, but I'll save that for my presentation. But there's issues to be had when upgrading. Some things that automatically upgrade are also very interesting. I have this refrigerator, and it's an LG refrigerator, and it's a very nice refrigerator. Every once in a while, the little light over the if dispenser goes out, I don't know what rationale it decides to turn that light on and off, but every time I look at it, it just happens to be on or off, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason. But to check the software, I have to use an app on my phone, and I go into an extended set of the menus, and I'm able to at least write down this 35-digit alphanumeric value that says, here's what software is currently running on this machine. Probably relates to some Linux variation that is running on this machine to let it communicate to the internet and transmit its usage information. Anyhow, the problem I ran into is I have this thing called a craft ice maker on this unit, which makes ice balls about that big in diameter. So about 1.25 inches. And in theory, it's supposed to dilute less of your drink when you use them, but it takes longer to manufacture them. There's 3 settings for the craft ice maker: off, 3 ice cubes a day, or 6 ice cubes a day. We had it set to 6 ice cubes a day because it would just about keep up with us, with both of us using the craft ice. Then one day it just stopped making ice cubes. So I called for support, and the first thing they try and do on support is, okay, go into the LG app, go and find your refrigerator. I'll now upgrade the software. I don't have a button to upgrade my software. Doesn't exist. On my version of the app, there is no upgrade software. And because I had started back in January calling them and said, hey, how come I don't have an upgrade software on my device? And I initiated a trouble ticket, and it finally got back to me and says, oh, it's automatic on your model. You don't need to upgrade your software. It automatically puts a new load in anytime it finds a new version of the software, which I think is kind of unnecessary, but it also means I don't have control of when it upgrades the software. So I called up LG, and they scheduled somebody to come out, and he took a look at it after described the issue with it, says, yep, broke ice maker. So I think the thing that dies on it is there is a heating coil that is utilized to free up some of the ice before it tries to eject it from the tray. And when it's in 6 ice cube a day mode, it's borderline using too much power to be considered Energy Star or to meet the Energy Star specs. So they're very hesitant about using enough power on the ice cube maker to free it up and allow it to continue. But either the heating element burned out on this unit that I had or something to that effect. They ended up replacing the ice cube maker completely. Took them like about 5 minutes. 2 screws, unplug one little thing, slam it all back together again, and done. But he did say, leave it set to no more than 3 ice cubes a day, at least until they get new firmware. Yes, Dennis.
it only makes 3 ice cubes per day?
of the large diameter. It makes a whole bunch of the smaller ones. There's 2 ice makers on the machine. There's one on the front door and there's one in the back. The craft ice that makes the big ice cubes, it only makes 3 of those a day.
Well, when you say big, what diameter are you talking about here?
About 1.25 inches.
That's really not that big, is it? I mean,
Here, let me show you.
Golf ball size.
my wife would die if she only got 3 ice cubes per day. She keeps one of these big container of water.
Maybe closer 1.5 inches.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, big enough. Yeah. Got to save this one. This is valuable.
God.
People
Yeah.
whose lives revolve around.
Well,
ice
the other
cubes.
reason for doing 6 or 3 originally and the specifications was it's capable of doing 6, but if you do 3, the ice cubes will be clearer. Okay, so if you want perfectly clear ice, you have it set to 3.
But
So it's a
it'll,
little less cloudy.
but it'll make a whole bunch of small ones.
Mm-hmm.
How big are the small ones?
Probably about 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch, usually.
Oh,
little,
awesome.
yeah. But it has a whole bunch of those in the front, and that's the one that dispenses in the ice dispenser in the front.
Okay.
You have to reach into the tray in the back to get the craft ice, but that's what you would want for cocktails.
Okay.
You put one of those in your martini, and then it does not melt as fast, and you get more alcohol. Fancy stuff. I think it's a good thing I purchased the extended warranty on this thing because I'm likely to have to go through more than one of these ice makers. Just seems a little strange that I would have to replace it in the first fourth of the year that it's been here. No, maybe a third of a year, about a third of a year.
Sounds like it isn't designed to produce those 6 per day.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Or like they're saying, it needs a firmware adjustment.
Well, that's the point, is that they're trying to adjust it with firmware, but they haven't made available to me any extended diagnostic capability. Like, what else can I go into this thing with to examine it? It does not appear yet to have a web presence. There's no web server inside of it, so I can access it. There may be other mechanisms where you could directly talk to it. I'm not sure if I have to plug it into the control in the back or on the top of the unit. I think the Wi-Fi connection is up on the top because there's a big section.
So it's always connected to Wi-Fi, so it can do these automatic updates. So.
Well, it can do updates and it can do other things as well and communicate with LG, who knows what about, how many times I open and close the door, among other things.
Every time you open the door, does it take your picture and send it to LG?
It has no camera in it. However, if I knock on the door 2 times, like knock, knock, it turns on the light. What does that tell you? What does it tell you, Dennis? That means there's a microphone in it.
Yeah, they're listening. Yeah.
They could be listening. They're not watching yet that I know of, but they could be listening.
I bet you they're watching you through that ice cube maker.
Yeah. I looked there. There ain't. It's going to be quite frosty in there. Yeah, and I haven't noticed it eyeing me or anything like that lately, but it does keep track of energy usage and other things as well.
Okay.
So in terms of actual energy usage, this thing is a lot more efficient than my previous refrigerator was. I was able to notice a significant improvement on my ComEd, my use versus my efficient neighbors. Now I'm usually leading the efficient neighbors instead of just behind them.
Did the service guy use a phone for his work, or did he have a LG computer?
He did not have an LG computer. He had, I want to say it looked almost like one of these. It was like maybe it was an LG or Samsung tablet type of stuff, but he did not try and do any diagnostics or anything with it while he was here. He relied on my interface and my pulling down the information. Said, here's the current software version that's running on here. Hasn't changed in a month and a half. And I mean, since he's changed it, it still hasn't changed. It's the same software that's been running in it. I had one software update, I think, since I had purchased it that I noticed, but I don't get it. I've turned off notifications from the app because you want to talk about bothersome. When somebody opens up the refrigerator or freezer and has it open for more than 30 seconds, it starts beeping. They'll let you know the door is open. You know what else it does? Sends text messages to your phone. This gets old in a hurry. So I didn't need to know the door is ajar. The door is a door. The door is not ajar.
Well, there's been automated.
Automated, yes. It's like, well, why didn't you shut the door? You're a computer. Just close it on whoever's there. No, it's kind of, interesting is what I'll say. Just interesting. I mean, it's nice. There's a lot of room in it. In terms of how it works, supposedly with it's got a linear compressor as opposed to a rotary compressor, which can be a little bit more efficient. The other thing that it has is its temperature control, because it does use a lot of fans to circulate air within the unit itself. So it is able to keep the temperature within a half of a degree. So it's very sensitive about knowing when it's got to produce additional cooling and such. And you can turn it up, and then it will, like if I'm putting a lot of stuff in there and I'm loading it up, I can I can push a button on my phone and say, run the compressor a little longer here because I just put a whole lot of stuff in here. So it'll help you keep up.
Did it have humidity control also?
I think it has some of that capability as well. It's got a water filter that still doesn't need to be changed yet, although LG sends me little notes that said, it's been 4 to 6 months since you had your LG, time to change the water filter. And I think, I thought it was going to tell me when it wanted the water filter changed. And it does. It says, your water filter looks good. It doesn't say how good it looks. It just says it looks good. I assume one day I'm going to get this text message that says, your water filter is horrible. We just tasted the water and it's bad. Yeah, I mean, there's already a filter in line with this filter, so it's not like I expect a lot of stuff to get through. I am on well, so it is important that sometimes you put filters in line, but yeah, I don't think they're going to get, unless it's activated carbon, it's not going to pull a lot of the odors out. You'll still get some odors that come through. It is, however, on my unsoftened water line and not the softened water line, because that's better for you rather than getting even more sodium in your system than you're supposed to. So other questions? Dennis had one. Who else has got a question out there? I see Sanford is strangely quiet today. And that wouldn't even get a rouse out of him. Okay. A couple other things that I wanted to try and figure out is, yes, he's laughing. Any other suggestions for future meetings while I have your rapt attention here? Harry, it looks like you were thinking of ready to say something there.
Well, nothing comes to mind right now. I'm still dealing with Windows 11 and the way that things keep changing from day to day. It's like it's got a mind of its own. It's even worse than it used to be.
It's hard to describe it. That's why a lot of the professionals say if you don't have to move to Windows 11 yet, they try and avoid it unless you want to be the guinea pig. I use one Windows 11 machine at church because it was one of the newer machines that somebody else decided and purchased without consulting anybody else. And of course, it doesn't have a physical Ethernet jack. Only has Wi-Fi and USB connections and USB-C power. So it is a Ryzen 5. So that's one good thing. It wasn't an underpowered chip, but I think it only has 8 gig of memory. So at some point in time, that'll become the limiting factor.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's a couple of nuances that I have to deal with on that, especially since we use it in conjunction with our Zoom presentations at church. We'll have our main Zoom machine, which is a full-sized desktop i7 12th generation, 16 gig of memory, and 2 4-terabyte drives, I think. One of them is a solid state. No, it's not. I take it back. Maybe it's only a 1 gigabyte solid state and the 2 4-terabyte additional drives. So it's got a lot of storage on it for capturing video and audio and connecting to Zoom. And this other machine is hooked up to a large screen TV down in the sanctuary and basically is able to show some of the people on Zoom as well as what else is going over the video feed, which should be the same thing on the projector that's on the other screen. But
Linux wouldn't give you more stability on those machines rather than using Windows?
I didn't purchase this machine. And the Windows machine is running OBS server. So, and it's also using PTZ optics. So it's got PTZ, what is it? The 130s, the 30X, 2 of those. And it's got gigabit ports going in and out to be able to drive these video entities. Also, we have NDI service coming from the projection laptop via Ethernet cable into this machine, so we can not have to have one of the cameras focused on the projector screen, but instead are picking off the video right from the projecting laptop. But the projector laptop and the main church computer there for the video are both Win 10. This other new one running the Ryzen 5 is a Windows 11. So,
but you said it doesn't have an Ethernet connection on it?
It only has Wi-Fi. It's one of the slim HPs, and it's so thin, it doesn't have the special Ethernet jack that slips down and you can plug an Ethernet connector into it. It doesn't have one. I mean, if I wanted to hook up Ethernet, then I'd have to go find one of these USB 3 or USB-C adapters that connects to gigabit Ethernet and be able to plug it in that way. But I was thinking, I'll just take this laptop over and use it to plug into my Cisco switch and Cisco router, and I need to run an Ethernet cable for that. And I'm looking on the side of it, there's no Ethernet connection in this stupid thing.
So you're saying you can, through a USB connection.
Yeah, if you have a machine that does not have a physical Ethernet connection, your alternative is third-party workarounds utilizing a USB connection, and also may have, sometimes you find them as a combo thing. So you plug into the one USB-C or USB 3 port, and then it mirrors those ports. So you have like a hub. It's also got a way you can send power in, and so you can power your device with it. And you can also plug in sometimes an external video port, like either a HDMI or a D series connector on the back, and an Ethernet port. Now, one thing that a friend of mine used for his Surface laptop that had an Ethernet connection and additional USB connections. He put in an external USB wireless dongle on it. So because the Wi-Fi chipset in his Surface was defective, it would occasionally not connect to anything and say it wasn't present. Bug in the original Surfaces, that Surface Pro, and the way you got around it, well, plug in another USB connection and another Wi-Fi USB adapter, and that's how we would connect. But a lot of laptops are port poor, so they may have like 2 USB-C ports, one in for power, one to drive everything else. Well, if you have more than one other thing, like a mouse, you know, well, you run out of ports real quick. So then you got to put in some sort of extender hub or docking station. And not all computers have been made now have the dock connector on the bottom that goes into the motherboard. They instead will connect the dock via USB.
Sometimes you have to use a powered hub if you're going to use a hub with that because you only got one USB connection to get into.
Yes, and then you have to run their power in, like your power adapter into the thing to help power everything or equivalent. But that usually tells you what kind of machine you have by what kind of power source goes into it. Remember, I pointed out my 200-watt power adapter here?
Right.
Well, that's because I got a full-sized i7 chip inside of here. It's not a mobile web version. It's a full-size desktop processor that cranks power. That's the way they used to make them when they had second generation. And the newer ones, well, they're using a much lower power chip. It's maybe a super Celeron or who knows, one of the low power i5, i7s that really are only dual core processors. If you look real carefully on some of the laptops, when you're looking at laptops, just check the chip that's inside of the laptop before you buy it, and then go look it up on the Intel website and say, well, how many cores does this have? Does this i7 have 4 cores with 4 hyperthreads, or does it only have 2 cores and 2 hyperthreads? That's not even an i7, that's barely an i5. But there are a number of chipsets out there which are mobile processor chipsets. So they have limited number of cores because that's the way you get the power down to 15 watts. If you have a chipset that only runs 15 watts, guess what? That 3-cell lithium battery runs a lot longer. It runs at 10, 12, 14 hours. If you have one that has 4 cores and 4 hyperthreads, that 3-cell lithium battery lasts you 2 hours. I mean, it'll last longer if it's powered down, but that's not the point. But it's all there in the specifications. It's just waiting for somebody to go ahead and read it. You have to look for it. So, okay. Well, any other questions? If not, I can start my presentation. One more chance. Questions? Okay. All right. Let's see if I can do this. Share screen. Share. Make it so. All right. And while I'm doing this, I will just go ahead and where's my chat? Come on. I need my chat back. I know I got to find my chat. It's hiding. That's not the one I want. Oh, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to stop the share, and now I can do the chat. That's not nice. All right. I want to do file from computer. Right here. Desktop. All right. Okay, everyone else can pull that up in the chat now. All right. Okay. It's funny, I couldn't get to the chat screen when I did the share because it didn't show up as an additional window, but now it does.
Ed, I'm not seeing anything new in chat.
No, no, I got to go check and see now who I sent it to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see anything in chat either.
Sorry about that. Let's do this one more time. Okay, chat. Oh, here. Remember to hit
Got
the
it.
send button, Ed. Remember to hit the stupid send button. Yes. Okay. All right. So when updates go sideways. So updates, are they a necessary evil? Possibly. Okay. With any software that has been created in the last 50 years comes the possibility of defects. Either you live with the defects that are in there because this was a burned prom back 50 years ago, or you have programmable memory which allows you to correct it by sending an update, assuming that the device you're trying to update has enough room to apply the update while still keeping a copy of the OS running. But on newer systems, many of the updates are occurring in the background and you hardly notice that they have occurred. And maybe that's a good thing when they occur and they silently update. I don't know how often my Roku gets updated, but it always seems to have a newer version when I turn around and look at it. So the only way in some of these systems you can even check to see if an update has been applied is go see what version software it's running and see what the last time you looked at it, what it was. In other systems, however, you might be the one that has to initiate the check for updates, sort of like Zoom. Do you want to check for updates? Most of the updates that we have, and especially ones that have been extensively tested or are on very simplistic systems, the desired results of having known defects removed and increased functionality is it does what it's supposed to. But what happens when you are the beta tester of the update and it doesn't go as planned? Just remember, because not all updates go as planned, there are a few steps to remember to do to prepare in case that event. On Windows PCs, you might want to make sure that you have a thing called system protection, which is enabled on your main disk drive where your OS and applications are stored. And the way to do that is to look for in settings system protection or create a restore point. Sometimes you can type in the word system protection and it pretends it doesn't know what it is. But if you see the thing to the side that says system protection or create a restore point and you click on it, you get to the right page. In either case, the same pop-up will show you the current state of protection on all of your fixed disk drives. The default setting on most of these versions of the operating system that you're currently running is off. Prior releases, it was on by default. With system protection enabled, you can create restore points and then revert to it in the future if it hasn't been overwritten. So in other words, you need enough space to handle the number of restore points you would like to hang on to. You might not see any real space available on small disk drives less than 128 gigabytes for the main system volume. This is sort of like what these things look like. The one on the left is the first pop-up that'll show you the available drives that system protection can run on and whether it's enabled. So I have two disk drives on this particular machine that I did this on. One was a solid state drive. The other one was a legacy hard disk, and that one was called backup. I did not need system protection on the backup drive since it rarely changes. And if you click on the configure button, you get the second pop-up. So you can see if system protection is on or off, and you can see the size. So on that particular machine, I had set aside 10 gigabytes of space on a 500 gigabyte drive, which is, it's adequate. It's not a lot, but it's not really small either. And I'm only using about 8 gig of that 10 before it starts overwriting. If you have that turned on, then you have the option to do a restore point and then go back to that restore point. Sometimes the restore point generation is automatic whenever you install new software or upgrade some software items. It'll say creating a restore point. Other times it'll do it before Windows updates has occurred. If it's going to be a significant update, Windows will attempt to do a restore point in case it has to go back to it. Some window updates can be uninstalled. And this can be done even without having system protection on, although I highly recommend that you start using it. Windows update can be removed. A Windows update can be removed by finding the update history, clicking on the update and removing it. And it will go through the motions of attempting to remove it. Sometimes it doesn't work. Doesn't always reliably remove some of the critical updates. In which case your full system backup and restore capability, that's one way to do it as well, or use the restore point. The only thing you need to be careful of is before you go to your previous backup, you may want to save some of the files you've changed because a full restore is just that. It's going to overwrite everything. What about individual program updates? Well, some of these programs like Zoom, like Chrome, like Firefox, automatically update the program whenever it's connected to a network. In this case, when the update is defective, it may be very difficult to return to the previous images without reverting to a backup. Chrome is notorious for always wanting to put in the latest update, except when it's on an older machine and it no longer supports updates. That's only seems to be the only reason Chrome won't do an update. I used to have problems on my Win 7 machine where a certain Chrome update around version 67 to 70 caused it to blue screen. And it was quite nasty. I was able to find an older version of Chrome in some of the Chrome download archives, restored it, and then it stopped doing updates on those. So if you go back to an older version, sometimes it can temporarily postpone the upgrading of Chrome. Zoom always wants to select the latest update, but if that update has issues with your specific hardware or software, you may need to locate an older version of the software in order to restore. Because when the new Zoom comes down, it doesn't give you an option to save the old Zoom somewhere else. So when I had to try and restore an older version of Zoom, I found this site. It happens to be located in Spain, but it seems to be relatively reliable. Get back to there and stay there. Yeah. It's called uptodown.com. And there's a Spanish and an English version. So I went on the English. And if this doesn't stop moving on itself, I'm going to unplug it. So there's the up to down and the Zoom versions as well. Okay, we'll just use page down then. Good. Now, when you download something from another site, it's always advisable to verify digital signatures on the thing you installed to make sure you got what you thought you were getting. You download the file to a safe location. You can right-click Properties, select Details, and check to see if it's the correct version that was what you downloaded. You can also select Digital Signatures tab, check to select the digital signature and click Details. And then you can view the certificate and verify its details. If all of those look right, chances are really good that you got an honest copy of the program and you don't have a scammed version. So this is what all of those pop-ups look like. The first one in the tiny print is the first thing you would see when you do a right-click Properties. And then if you say Advanced, or let's say you click the Details tab, then you would see the second panel. So you can see the version number that Windows is reporting that this is version 5.14. And then the third thing that I can click on comes from the digital signatures that are inherent on this particular file, particularly if it's an exe file, it almost always has to be signed. there are two different signatures here. One is a much shorter version. The other one is the more secure and longer version. You can check either of them. I checked the second one, the SHA1 signature, and verified it and pulled it. It said view certificate. All of those things said okay. So that means that those signatures were valid, and this is a real copy of a downloaded Zoom. But that's the extent to which you can go to verifying something before you turn it loose on your system. Can it still be modified around all of this? Yes, but usually one of these things will fail then when somebody starts to modify it. So how do you replace that version that you have with an older version? Two ways. You can remove the current version, uninstall it, and install the new version. You might lose some of your settings when you do that. Other times you can just install the old version on top of the newer version to revert it back. I've used that before with OBS server. When we tried a new version of it, failed miserably because the NDI had been lost in that functionality in the newer version. So I just had the older version, installed it right back on top, didn't have to change any settings or anything, worked just like a champ, the way it was supposed to. Driver software. This is where you really can get sticky. Drivers can be less inclined to remove nicely, and you may not be able to put the older driver back in, particularly if the older driver was a legacy driver and allowed certain options where system protection was not important on that version of Windows. They seem to overlook some of this when migrating drivers and allowing new drivers to take their place. My LaserJet printer drivers that I downloaded and used in 1903 weren't supported in 21H1 and H2. So what I ended up doing was using printmanagement.msc to export the drivers and their configurations and import them onto the other computer. So this is where you can export the drivers and files into the file, export them to a file. On that particular machine, that turned into about 120 megabyte file. Not small, but it had all the drivers, all the software, all the configurations to restore and put onto the new machine. And you can save it on your machine and then import it later if something goes south. If you tried to update a driver and now you can't put your old driver back in, you can use this to restore it as well. And finally, this is something I was talking about earlier when I had described my situation with my USB tethered one-touch Vireo IQ blood sugar meter, which used a custom USB driver. And I had this in 2019, but the design of this unit actually backdates to 2013. And I preferred this one because it was nice. It had a rechargeable battery, and I never changed the battery on it. I don't think you can. You'd have to open it up and do something. But it worked fine, and I had migrated from my Win 7 platform to Win 10 and moved the, put another copy of the app on the new machine and installed it from that folder. Was able to transfer the information on the new machine. And every time I got a reminder, it says, oh, you need to update this driver. So I would click on this and it would uninstall the old one and put the new one in. And it never gave you an option to save a copy of it either. It's like, here, you want to save a copy of this? No. And when I moved to 5.0.33701, it would no longer see my meter. My meter was gone. It was not responding. It said, your meter cannot be found. What do you mean my meter cannot be found? I can find it just fine. It's plugged in. Even the meter was showing me, you're connected to the PC. Like, wait a minute, somebody's not playing right here. And I started looking into the debug capability that was in this particular mechanism, this driver. And I could see the log as it was trying to do stuff. And also it could short circuit the scanning of different meters, like what kind of meter do you have? So I would do the, I would update the meter to update to look for my meter, and I didn't see my meter listed in the list of meters. And I went onto my old Win 7 machine and I did the same thing, looked at it there, and I could find my meter. Said, you have removed support for my meter. So their planned obsolescence was a bit premature. And as a result, they ended up they finally decided to send me a replacement meter. And I had a couple little discussions with the help after that. I had gotten the email from them, says, we're going to replace your meter. And I had to remind the people I were talking to, but I have this email here that says you're going to send me a new meter. Oh, okay, I guess we are. Let me check. Okay, we'll send you a new meter. But the new meter isn't quite as nice as the old meter in terms of it doesn't have rechargeable batteries. And now I'm going to have to play battery change and keep coin battery supply around here. Now, granted, coin batteries are not that expensive, but it's just something else that gets used up and thrown away in landfill, and I would prefer not to have to do that as much. Of course, I probably could find those few CR 2016 batteries or 2032 batteries that are capable of being recharged. I'm pretty sure that's the kind of battery that's in the old G-Shock watches. And it charges from solar, but it charges at such a low level, it doesn't have to worry about overheating the battery. And if it doesn't use that much power, it might be capable of recharging itself. I'll put a solar cell on the side of this thing and put it out in the sun every day. Any questions? Bob pointed out some stuff to me earlier about what happens when you get a Windows update item in and you don't want to have this particular update applied to your system because you've read some horror stories that this update will make your printer non-functional, it'll make your Chrome browser non-functional, and it'll basically give you a headache. And you can either defer the entire update, but if you want something that protects you in that update and you don't want that particular item, there is a package called WU Show Hide. And it's a cabinet file. Is it a D cabinet?
Diagnostic cabinet.
Yeah, diagnostic cabinet. If you have the chat, you should see the links to where you can obtain that. And also,
if they came in late, they won't see that.
Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's do save chat.
I can put it in again.
Well, no, I'm just going to copy this.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to do this. This will be interesting. File, your computer. Let's see.
But anyway, the whole point is it's an additional tool that's available.
Yes, it is.
And my reference is to an article that has a direct link for downloading it.
Yes. Okay, so I'm sending it. So there's a copy of the meeting save chat that I just did. And if you download it, you'll have a copy of the save chat. I wasn't sure if I could send the thing that I just saved into or not, but it allowed me to do that. That would have been an interesting bug if it continued to loop while sending and saving and sending and saving. But there's that item, and there's, like I said, the other link that shows you how to use it would allow you to do what we used to be able to do in Win 7 and earlier releases. You could right click on an update that was scheduled to download and say hide it and keep it from being applied to your system. Win 7 used to be obnoxious that it would sometimes want to download non-optional updates that you knew caused errors. Like the one that I used to like to hide was the one that would tell you that Windows 7 is obsolete. So I would disable that one and hide it. And so it wouldn't let me know that my Windows 7 was obsolete. I know it's obsolete. I am painfully aware that it's obsolete. You don't need to remind me every time I power on my laptop.
Yeah, in my case, as we were discussing earlier, there was a Windows driver, which was a lower version than an Intel type of driver, and the Windows driver kept trying to install itself. Now, I don't like to hide drivers altogether in Windows Update because generally I get good drivers from it. But in this case, I did have to hide that one, but I wanted to keep the others available.
Yeah, I've seen where, and sometimes you want to hide an update that Windows continually tries to download and is unable to for whatever reason. So give it a rest. You can't download it for whatever reason. I don't have the hardware or the information that you're looking for. Go away. Yes, and that's one thing to do. And I guess WU Show Hide is actually an old Microsoft product.
Yeah.
That was available to do this when they realized that sometimes in Windows 10 and 11, you don't want to apply everything. Microsoft doesn't know everything.
Actually, it was in Windows 10 and 11, they tried to get rid of this thing so that you could not do this anymore. It was available previously since about Windows 95.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it was just another way of doing these things.
Yeah.
It's a simple matter of check boxes next to updates, and they're not listed by KB, they're listed by title.
Yeah. It's like looking for the right driver in the alternate Windows driver download directories on Microsoft. And okay, so which one of these LaserJet printer drivers will be the one that I want? And you don't know until you've clicked in and you're ready to download it. Like, no, this is the 32-bit one. I want the 64-bit version of the driver.
Yeah, the update catalog is fun that way too.
And there's still ones in there that say it's supported under Windows 10, but it's not supported under Windows 10 if it looks for the memory protection requirements. So this driver is not appropriate for your computer.
In Windows 11, I've had to turn off memory protection or core isolation because of some Logitech drivers.
Yeah. Oh, Logitech drivers. You just said it right there. That's an oxymoron right there. Logitech drivers.
Yeah, well, these are older webcam designs, but I bought them recently. So I'm not
I
ready to
have
get rid of them.
had number of Logitech devices that I've used in my history of using machines. And there were times where, especially cameras, I ended up uninstalling the Logitech drivers and using anything that Windows found that would work with them. I
Yeah,
lost the tracking capability, like track your head, and have it automatically figure out where you're at and focus on you. Did not need that capability, just wanted it as a webcam. And it worked fine as a webcam using the stock drivers that came and used it that way. But if I tried to use the Logitech, I was always having compatibility issues or false positive from some of my antivirus stuff was blatant. I mean, it would just come up and say, I'm sorry, but we can't install this driver because it's got a virus.
yeah.
Didn't have a virus.
I wish there were Windows drivers for these webcams, but apparently they're too old for Windows 10 and 11.
Yeah. I sort of tried these. These are the Nexigo ones that were available on Amazon and like about $30. And seems to work pretty good. I had one issue on the other computer I still haven't resolved. I swapped cameras and it's working fine here, hasn't blinked at all. So now I got to go back to the other machine and hook it up to Zoom and see if it does the same thing again, or play with the settings on Zoom to see what it is that it's not happy with.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
I opened the chat that you pasted in there,
Uh-huh.
but the last item posted in it is from Sid. Sid's not even in the meeting about Mayo Clinic. And is this the right chat?
Where did you get the chat? Did you find a file on your computer or did you open chat inside of Zoom? Click on the more, the 3 dots on more on Zoom and use that chat and see what's there.
The more on Zoom. Well, what I did was, okay, I clicked on where you put in meeting save chat. I clicked on it and downloaded it.
Oh, maybe I gave you the wrong one.
And then.
Oh, yes, I did. Never mind. I picked the wrong one.
To open
My
it,
fault.
click again. So I clicked again and I'm seeing something else.
Yeah. Let's go here. Let's see. Yeah, I got to click on this. Cancel. Let's do this. Let's save the chat again. All right, show in folder. All right. And now it is, that's where it is. Oh, it's in document Zoom. Let's do this. Okay. Now I will pick up the file, your computer, Zoom.
I see Terry has stopped working.
That's the right one.
Taxes for a while and has joined us.
No, that's 2021. Hold on.
You're muted, Terry.
There it is, 420. Found
Hey,
it.
tax season ended Tuesday. Hurrah, hurrah.
Try that one, Dennis. Sorry.
Now I got about 100 extensions to worry about.
Yep.
First one you put in there was dated 4/20/23, was 242.5 KBs. That's the one
Yeah.
that I got. That's the one I have in chat. And I
Yeah.
opened it and it opened up and showed the same thing you've been just working from.
Well, I just sent you the right one. So the second one is the right one. So
Okay.
sent at 8:12. Yeah.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, when you see it, when you open it as text, it will not show all these various documents. But
Well, you can cut and paste and you will get the right things. Yeah.
I know,
yeah.
I know what it's doing. But if you read it, it will end with what Sanford posted at
Yeah.
8:34.
Yeah.
But it will have what's earlier in the meeting, which is what we're trying to make sure everybody can have.
Right. And let me resend the presentation again. So save chat really doesn't save chat. That's interesting. Save chat only saves the text of the chat, not all of the messages.
Well, it can't save files because it's not the right format.
I could change the format and have links to the files where they were sent, you know, and keep
Yeah.
copying them. Yeah, but it doesn't do that. So let me go ahead and resend my presentation to people that arrived late. Okay, desktop. Good. And there's
Yeah.
one extra copy of that. Good.
Okay. We've got that. We're fine.
But interesting. Fun and games with Zoom. I still haven't figured out all of the nuances of the zoom.us website and all of the settings, like why do you want, no, I didn't need to show that, Terry. But there's a number of options in Zoom that are not necessarily, yeah, you don't want to launch the meeting. Yeah. But there's a number of settings in there that are specifically for the capabilities of managing the Zoom account. And I know that there are, let's see if I can get into this one. Yes. User management. Yes, the users. I was going to see if we have, we only have the one here, and roles. I know on our one at church, okay, so we only have one owner, we have no admin and no member logins on this. Interesting. Our particular Zoom account for our church, we have all of those roles filled up. So we have 3 users basically. User, the owner, the admin, and the user. I see we have not, I'm not sure what version of Zoom we are signed up for. If we're still trying to use the basic Zoom for nonprofits, cheap one. I'm pretty sure that we are running probably a middle grade Zoom for our church. And I've been told that you can run 2 Zoom sessions at the same time, but the owner, administrator, whatever, has to start the one Zoom, assign somebody else as the co-host or host, leave the meeting and start the second meeting in order to have the 2 meetings running at the same time. But I have not experimented with that yet. And to quote the Cisco certified engineers that would recommend what version of software to apply on your Cisco product, they said there's usually about 4 versions of software you can apply to a Cisco router, switch, edge router, whatever. They go all the way from the most stable release that everything that's in that release will work and work without problems, to the most advanced one where it'll be buggier than hell. But it has all the new features in it. And then you have a choice of what level of pain on the other 2 releases in between that you can choose to use. And that seemed to win out in practice. I found that you didn't always want the newest version of Cisco software unless you wanted to be the beta tester. And frequently, some of our customers would be using the latest version of the software, and I'd be helping them debug it. Pretty fun. Any other questions? Terry, you came here late. Do you have any questions?
You're muted.
Yeah.
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Just thought I'd check.
Thank you for the attention. Yeah.
Well, if I can see a face, I can talk to it.
That is true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Where are you going to buy your 2032 batteries? Amazon or Costco?
Actually, you want to know one place you can still pick some of those things up relatively inexpensively?
I would.
Dollar Tree.
Really?
The dollar store has a lot of those lately. I've looked and said, oh, look, here's the alkaline batteries. I can use one of those. Yeah, lithiums, small lithiums. Yep. They're making cheap small lithiums in China now, and that's where Dollar Tree's getting them from.
Okay.
It's $1.25, not $1, but yeah. But I've pulled some of those out and put them into my my remotes for the cars, and they seem to work fine in those. And I've kept the supply available for the meters too. So I usually like to make sure for those button cells I keep an extra one around. The only other one is the CR123 is one of the ones that I have to use. Is that the designation? I think I'm using it by memory. Yes, that is the one, I think. Yes. Which is a 1550 mAh 3-volt lithium battery. Thank you very much. That happens to be the battery that I have to use in my wireless smoke detector for my alarm system. Because without fail, about once a year, that battery goes to low bat. And then I get this shriek that says the battery is low.
So
Replacement.
it's not a cell battery then, right? It looks like a,
It's a small battery. It's a little one, but it's a chunky one. Yeah.
okay.
Not like the old N batteries you used to put in your pagers. We used to burn those.
It was like a photo battery, and they're a little.
Yeah, it is. It's a
like a
it's a
fat
type of photo
AA.
battery. Yeah. The camera batteries are the same thing, CR123. But I've had to replace that in the detector because it connects to the alarm system with, I'm not sure if it's a type of Bluetooth. It probably is something more exotic. It's probably 900 megahertz.
So at the Dollar Tree, it's not like Duracell's marked down. It actually has a no-name brand on it.
Yeah, they have a no-name brand lithium batteries. Yeah, and they're bubble packed, so you get like maybe 2 of them for the price or something. Yeah,
Okay.
or if you're looking for the little button alkalins, they have them as well. I mean, there are other places that carry them on a discount as well. If you go to some of the discount places like Ollie's, I think even Menards carries them on occasion.
Oh, I want to show you something real quick that I bought at Dollar Tree.
Harbor Freight's got a bunch of the batteries too that you can buy pretty cheap.
Yeah. Just have to make sure that you don't hang on to them too long where they start leaking.
Well, guys, let me get your opinion. Some of our clients are coming in this AI stuff. You know, they're all concerned they're going to lose their jobs, and I'm telling them, well, it's 15 years away or whatever. What do you guys panic or way on the future? Don't worry about it. What's some of your thoughts on this? You know, like card CRT and all this other stuff going
Chat
on.
GPT and Bard, yeah, they're great to play with. Are they realistic? They can spin a good story, and that's exactly what they do. They spin a good story. They are based on what it finds on the internet from the last couple years or so, and it takes good information and bad. I don't think it vets much any of it. And it will create facts in light of not having some. Now, if you want a story, if you want a speech that doesn't stand up to fact checking, go ahead and use Chat GPT.
So that you guys don't think people should worry about losing their jobs. Huh?
Well, it depends.
I asked Chat GPT what it knew about me, and it told me I had been president of CCS.
Yeah.
Okay, I have never been president of CCS, but it spun a good story.
Okay, I don't know why they said this, but I just heard something on the news. I swear it wasn't more than 5-6 days ago that somebody said, what kind of professions could lose jobs to Chat GPT? And they said, well, some service industry things. And he read off 3 or 4 things. And I don't know why. And I'm not joking, Terry. One of the ones he said was accountants. And I don't know why they would think accountants could be replaced by Chat GPT or something. But
only if they can be not accused of lying to the federal government when they sign your tax forms.
Well, they have that now. I think what they're talking about is that, like the bank, you can download the bank and they'll load the checks into QuickBooks. I think that's a lot of that's going away because the banks, you know, you download the information
transactions,
and it will post it into QuickBooks, and that's you know, that's cost some jobs. You know,
okay.
Because they used to hand post them in, and so yeah, I mean, there's been some, yeah, probably a lot of industries the same way. Yeah.
Customer service. There's always been an automated option, and there are increasingly more sophisticated automated options which are available. So that
you want to know what Chat GPT is ideally suited for? Robocalls.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know, they're supposed to find these people, but God, the number of spam calls is, unbelievable. I mean, nobody enforces it, so they just keep calling,
You know what happens? They call me and they tell me something and I said, I don't believe you. I think you're a liar. And then they hang up.
Well, and I think like Social Security sells lists, because we're getting all this the senior care and all this other. Oh my
Yeah.
God, it just they're selling names of people got nothing else to do. Calling.
The minute they try and tell me
that kind
either
of stuff, yeah.
senior care or the Neptune Society, or they want to sell me a grave plot, I said,
Oh,
"You already
yeah.
got those
Oh,
things
yeah,
taken
yeah.
care of."
Oh yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there is a way to create an answering message, which starts out with the 3-tone alert that says that your number is not in service. And some robocallers, many of them, in fact, will be fooled by this, and you'll be taken off the list.
The problem you have by doing that, and I seriously considered using those recorded tones because I have the recorded tones that I could add.
Yeah.
Is that if a robocaller calls your phone and it says it's not in service, then they may start spoofing your number to be used when they call out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not in service. I can use that number.
Well, the problem, the number you see is not the real number they're calling from.
I understand, but they can spoof it.
Phone numbers
with-
they use or
They can
whatever.
spoof it with another number. And that's because the phone system allows them to do that through these certain IP providers, the IP to SS7 gateway providers. If they were to lock those guys down and said, if I get one robocall from you, you get shut down, they would stop doing it. There are 2 caller ID fields in the Q931 handshake. There is the caller ID presentation and the caller ID identification. Okay? Caller ID identification is what you see as the number on your phone. Caller ID presentation is the number that is getting billed for the call. They are lying with the caller ID presentation number. That is illegal. That's a $10,000 fine. Get them.
Yeah, but nobody enforces it. That's a problem. I mean,
That's the thing. Why don't you start enforcing it? You have it on the books. It's a $10,000 fine.
Nobody should speed. People speed. I mean,
It's not the same thing as speeding. There's not a $10,000 fine for speeding.
True.
There's a $100 fine for speeding and more if you've been going faster. It's appropriate to the seriousness of the offense. If you lie about your caller ID presentation, you are intending to defraud. If you're intending to defraud, that's a felony. It is a felony.
The other
Yeah,
thing,
it's prosecutable.
talk about aggravation of these red light. Now, I've got getting stuff, and they send you the photo thing, and I'm clearly stopped, and I do the red, I think people just pay the $100 and don't even, protest it.
Do you actually protest it and go there and review it?
Damn right I do.
Okay. You have that right.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm self-employed, so I can go. But a guy working a regular 9-to-5 in an office, it's tough. I mean,
Actually, I think red light cameras is the one true use where you should use an AR-15.
Yeah, but I'm clearly stopped. Wait a second.
I'm willing to stop when I take it out. Yeah.
I get the signal mail, with a picture that shows me stopped and turning right, and pay $100 or whatever. Unbelievable. I guess the villages really need the money, I guess. Yeah.
Depends on what town you're in and which village, because I think the premise that they used to install the red light cameras was faulty and inaccurate. And no intersection that has had red light cameras added has improved its accident statistics.
Yeah. I mean, I look at, they send me the 3 little photographs, and I'm clearly, and they're right. A lot of people just pay the $100 and want to be done with it.
And some towns have actually removed the red light cameras.
Yeah.
And I know Oak Brook wants to take out the one that Oak Brook Terrace keeps putting back. And they're still fighting over that.
Well, they said that's not a moving violation, so they don't report it to the Secretary of State. I don't know if that's true or not.
It's,
There have been towns that have tried to charge people with so-called P tickets, which don't even go through the courts.
hmm. Well, we also have the thing in Chicago where they put red light or speed cameras in school zones. And anytime you exceed the speed limit in the school zone by even 6 miles an hour, they trigger a ticket. And that is just a money grab, pure and simple.
Well, and the other aggravate, now the schools are putting gender bathrooms in their schools. The guy at client, Downers Grove South said, there has been money to put a transgender washroom in the high school. Unbelievable. So it's going to cost her, $1 million or whatever for a brand new washroom.
Hey, they've done this forever. You just say bathroom, okay? And it's a one stall, whatever. Whoever gets in there first wins. Done.
In Massachusetts, they just put in a symbol that's male and female.
Yeah.
And family
two
bathrooms will
genders?
also have
Oh, yeah,
an
oh, yeah.
infant.
Yeah, for a female gender going into the male one. Yeah, right.
You know, they don't have a problem with this.
Unisex.
They don't have any problem with this in Europe, okay? You just go in there and there's a hole in the floor and you have to be good aim.
Yeah.
Yeah, transgender should be an outhouse.
Since
You've
we're
never
gonna,
been to Italy, have you, huh? Yeah. Yeah, pilot the bombardier, she's all yours.
since we're gonna put this video on YouTube, for people visiting the Chicago Computer Society, I'm gonna bring it back to electronics here.
Okay.
Good idea, good idea.
Well, little never hurts,
So this is what I bought from the dollar store. It's a light, LED light.
Yeah,
Turn it on. It's bright as unbelievable. I mean, it's for $1.25. But here's the thing. So after I run it for a while,
yeah,
this bed gets so incredibly hot.
yeah.
It's hotter than anything. I was trying to see if I could pry out this front case, maybe to give it air, and then
No,
maybe I could cut grooves in the head here to release heat. But I don't know.
if you could take it apart, you'd be better served pulling the electronics out and drilling holes in that around aluminum section there and letting air flow that way.
Around the
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. There's probably a heat sink on the back of the LED array and or the electronics, because I'm assuming only the LED array is in that end of the head, and it's dissipating heat through the aluminum outside shell.
Yeah, it says Sunbeam. I don't know if you can read
Yeah,
it.
I think I have one of those. Yes,
Oh,
I think I have one.
okay.
But I mean, and it was like $1.25, but
Yeah.
that you get what you pay for. Yeah. I mean, you could put a giant set of fins on the other end where the head is and let it radiate the heat that way. Like take a piece of aluminum flashing and bend it into little fins that are about 1 inch high and have it go wrapped around the entire thing and attach it with a band clamp. Not a band clamp, but a hose clamp. And that would probably work in terms of dissipating some of the heat. Would look like hell, but
Yeah, well, I just care about the functionality, and I was just
Uh-huh.
we're going to start a fire because it gets so hot. That's
some of the LED bulbs that go into regular fixtures, they screw in Edison-based bulbs. I have measured the temperature of the ceramic shell after it's been operating for a while, and it is over 60 degrees Celsius.
what is that Fahrenheit?
Burn enough to burn you.
Okay.
What is it, 160? I think it is. All right. 140. 140.
Yeah, that's pretty hot.
And it was in excess of like 66 or something like that Celsius was when I measured it. It's like, you are hot. No wonder I get burned when I try and take these things out when they die.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're that hot when they burn out. I've had that with the CFLs. You go to take a CFL out that's not burning anymore, and you get burned on that.
You mean as soon as it burns out? You don't mean like
Even after it's burned out, it's still sucking power.
really?
Yes.
Wow, really? Huh.
Because sometimes if they like go dim or they flicker a lot, that's when they're dying. Usually it's one of the non-solid state components that has failed, one of the capacitors. And if you take these things apart, and I've taken a number of them apart to look inside, and you can see the capacitors were not rated for that temperature that you just measured. 60 Celsius, if you don't have a capacitor that's rated at 60 Celsius, its lifetime just got shortened by an order of magnitude. I mean, you can buy capacitors that are rated to 60 or 70 degrees Celsius, but that's not what they put in the light bulb that they sell for $1. They put in the cheaper components and said, it'll last for a year, and then they'll throw it in the landfill. Which is typically what happens on some of these things. The original LED light bulbs, when you first bought them, Sylvania used to advertise a service life of 25,000 hours. You will not find a single LED bulb today that has a quoted service life of 25,000 hours. They're all rated less than that. Why? Because the components that they're using inside of these things are not rated to run that long. So they don't want to be, so typically that's the ridiculousness of some of these things. It's like some of the original IBM hard disk drives were originally rated at over 1 million hours between failures. 1 million MTBF, which means this thing should run for 128 years continuously. Okay? They don't. The bearings wear out long before that and turn to dust. There's no way it can ever get to 1 million hours MTBF. So and the more complex you make a system, the shorter the combined lifetime of the system. So the more components that you put into that little thing, that light bulb, the less likely it's going to run as long as it does. That's why some incandescent bulbs ran forever, because they ran them on lower voltage. And you saw one in grandma's house that she's had burning for 60 years. Find me a light bulb that's burned for 60 years. Not here. And certainly not an LED. The LEDs are the way they're supposed to fail. I have had one light bulb that has started to do that. And I haven't opened it up to check and see if one of the LEDs failed and the rest of them kept burning. But they're supposed to just get dimmer. So at its service life, it is supposed to be at half the brightness it was. All of the LED bulbs that I've replaced have all failed completely long before their service life expired. I don't know if the rest of you have any other experience, you found a better brand of LED bulb than that, let me know. But it probably costs 4 times as much as the cheap ones. And then the question is, did you really get 4 times the life out of it?
I have some cheap LEDs that have lasted for years, but in each batch, 1 or 2 of them won't last.
Yeah. I was doing a whole bunch. I had purchased a whole number of the Zillotech bulbs, which I can't get anymore. The reason I purchased those was because in a 100-watt light bulb, I could get a single light bulb with 1600 lumens at warm white frequency. And so at 3000 Kelvin, it would do, and it was rated at either 5 or 10,000 hours or something like that. And the reason I like those is I needed that much light in the fixtures that I wanted to replace some very large mogul base bulbs, 500-watt mogul bulbs, and replace them with 4 of these little Edison base bulbs. And I would snap the shells off of the plastic shell, just snaps off. And then it's like a little short bulb, and you could screw it in, and it has a little bit better lifetime because now air can get into the electronics and they have it cooled off. So if you can take off that diffuser lens, Dennis, you might get a little bit more air in there, but then you still run into the problem, where's the heat going to go? The heat wants to go up. You have this thing facing down.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old adage of when you have a light bulb,
if I could see inside of it, maybe I could cut grooves.
Like I said, you might be able to, but you need a lot more than one groove. You need a hole where air can pass through passively and have a lot of air go through. Actually, be better to put a fan on it, but then that kind of looks a little weird.
Well, hey, if I can buy from Dollar Tree, $1.25 fan to put on.
Yeah, you could probably get that. Yeah. Or having a fan in the base and then this long tube that blows the air over the thing. Yeah, there's an idea for you. Sometimes the life of the bulb changes based on whether it is burned base up or base down. And the reason for that is if it's burning base down, heat can escape up and not go through the rest of the electronics. If it's burning base up, all the heat tries to go back up through the electronics and cooks the rest of it, and that's why they fail. More information that you probably never even knew about LED light bulbs. In terms of fluorescence, there used to be this massive document that I think General Electric had commissioned. It was like a 200 or 300 page book that talked about how the fluorescent tubes worked and how many volts per foot and how to ballast them properly and how to get the maximum life out of them. It really was an amazing reading book, but they never upgraded it for LEDs. So, but a lot of the same plans, you can calculate the failure mode of a complex system if you know the failure of each of the individual components, or you can estimate the failure mode of each of the components, especially if they're run past their temperature rating. And like I said, if you honor the temperature at the temperature rating, you can achieve the service life. If you exceed the temperature rating is when it quickly diminishes the availability of the remaining service life. So it shortens the life a whole lot by doing that. Sometimes you can just reduce the power going into the light bulb assembly, cut down on the brightness, and make it last that much longer because it's now running cooler. These R20 equivalent bulbs that I have in a light bar over in our bedroom set, we have a light bar, and I have these R20 floodlights. And when I replaced them from 50-watt R20s with LEDs, some of them were designed with this heavy metal heat sink around the unit, which had helped conduct the heat away from the LED assembly and let it escape through holes in the top of the fixture. That's the only reason that some of these things are still working after 10 years. Because it was about 10 years ago that I replaced the first ones with, they were 2-watt LED bulbs. I mean, it was replacing a 50-watt flood lamp, but 2-watt LED. Yes, and then I couldn't find the 2s anymore. I had to replace the ones in the middle with 4-watt LED bulbs. Those are much brighter. But when you run them with a conventional dimmer, sometimes you get a microphonic frequency you can hear in the bulbs. You hear little buzzing noises, buzzing or whistling noises. They're not designed to run with the conventional dimmers. They want an electronic dimmer that's designed for LED bulbs. Even though these bulbs were not designed to be dimmed, you needed both. Bulb designed to be dimmed and an LED compliant dimmer. I guess there's at least 3 or 4 different kinds of dimmers that are out there, depending on what kind of bulbs you use, if you do use dimmable bulbs. And because I was watching something on Ask This Old House, and what kind of bulbs do you want to use here? Oh, well, in that case, we need this dimmer. Whoa, there's more than one. There's more than 2. So if you're going to do that, go research it. Okay, maybe I should talk about LED bulbs sometime. I can put that on my list. Maybe. Okay. Bulbs. What's inside? Picture what's inside an LED bulb so you know what you're looking at, how they work.
And have we got time for a general question?
Sure.
All right, we're getting a lot of foreign clients. You can talk in and you can get English dictation, right? I mean, you talk in and it'll type it out in English, correct?
Right now it's doing it on our Zoom session.
Well, do they, like, if I talk in English, can it put it in Spanish or other foreign languages, or is that too far advanced?
No, it can put it in other languages, as long as the words that you're trying to use have some basic capability of translation. You can change the language, but you have to be careful that what you're saying might not be converted correctly into the target language completely.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sentence structure or whatever, but we go word for word, like house, and it put casa or something like that, or.
Yeah, but the grammar could be messed up because of the way that different kinds of languages convert. And then there's the semantic versions of, okay, are you trying to convert to Hebrew Arabic? It's got to paint from the right to the left. Okay. Are you doing Chinese? Are you going top to bottom? Okay. Or the order in which characters are read isn't always right to left.
Oh yeah, we might try that to convey stuff to some of the clients or whatever, because they don't understand English or whatever. But if you could put the main words maybe in their foreign language, they would get the gist of what you're saying, I think.
I would suggest is trying to actually use a translation and record it. So you would speak English, it would record in another language, take that language and then try and convert it back to English and see what you get. Because they're going to ask you questions, are they not?
Well,
how are you going to get them interpreted?
Yeah, I mean, but we're trying to, they have no clue of what we're saying in English or whatever. So if we could put in a lot of the words in their own language, I mean, they get a gist of what we're talking about or whatever.
And like I said, not everything translates completely. I recall watching it was a Netflix called The Protector, and it's a Turkish-based sci-fi program. And it had dubbed in English, and it also had captions turned on. And sometimes the words they spoke were completely different than what the caption read. So bear in mind, you may get what you paid for. Okay.
Well, it would probably help if they could get the gist of what we're saying or whatever.
It might, okay, but you may need to validate it, to verify, how well does it translate? How many words does it miss? Because I recall even using translators in Japan and talking with some of my friends that were having to present. I had to present in Russia, and one guy had to present in Japan. And when he went to Japan, he was talking about a telephony interface. And he spoke a whole bunch of things about how the telephony interface works. And this guy that translated converted it into like about 3 or 4 words. Okay. And then he did some more big long, and then another 3 or 4 words. And then he found out what the guy said. This man is very knowledgeable. This man is an M20 expert. That was his translation. Okay. So the technical translation will overpower a regular translator. What do you think it's going to do to a computer? So if it's really technical, you may need to have it drafted into their language first and have that available to them so that they can do it.
Yeah, I once tried looking at one of the transcripts from one of our recorded meetings here and reading through some of the transcript, and there was a number of things that didn't make any sense. It just didn't properly transcribe it.
It takes a best guess word.
Yeah.
Even the words I'm saying sometimes change after I've said it. Like it realizes, oh, he had a space in between those two.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Bob? You were trying to say something before.
No, not terribly relevant in light of what Ed said about there being technical language limitations. I was going to say that as long as you're dealing with basic business communication, what's sometimes called command English, that will usually translate well. Yeah, anytime you start getting beyond that or start getting into what are known as idioms or color language, then things start to fall apart with translators.
Like slang you're talking about, like, or whatever. Yeah.
Acronyms can throw off a translator.
Compared with English, Spanish can be very regional. It can be highly idiomatic. And so things really don't translate well, especially from Spanish from a particular country or a particular region back into English if the translator isn't tuned to that particular region.
Yes. Been there, done that. I've been to Madrid and had to give a technical presentation. Good thing I had some very fluent telephony-based translators.
Thank you.
Yeah. And even the same Spanish, the Spanish you speak in Mexico versus the Castilian Spanish in mainland Spain, and even in Argentina, buenos dias becomes buena dia down in Argentina. They slur things together, they change things slightly. People in Argentina can usually start to speak portions of Portuguese. Yes. So yeah, depending on your target audience, it'll be easier if your audience has a Latin-based language, English, French, Spanish, Italian.
Well, yeah, that's what I've heard. The romantic languages, I guess they call
less likely are the Balkan languages, Russian. Russian. I'll give you an example. Okay, I was in Rostov-on-Don, and we're driving up to our hotel, and everything is in Cyrillic except this one sign that says hotel parking. And I said, how come that is in English and everything else is in Cyrillic? And he said, we don't have a word in Russian for parking. About the closest thing you can have for the word parking is leave your idling tank here. There is no word for parking in Russian. Leave your idling tank here.
Well, we also import words from other languages.
Yeah.
There's no English word for ski.
Yeah, that's good. Even if it's at the end of your name.
Well, true. But skiing, we don't have a word in English for it. We just borrow one.
Yeah.
Toboggan is also not an English word.
I'm trying to remember the name of the there used to be a company down that used to sell computer parts, and I'm trying to remember the exact name of it, and it escapes me. But it was an Oriental family that was running it, but because they wanted it to sound more European, they added ski to their name, and that was the name of the company.
Okay.
Wanski or something like that.
Whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, that was, I mean, you'll get stuff like that, you know, changes things completely. But I mean, especially technical specifications, unless you can resolve it to very defined English terms that are universally accepted, megabits, megabytes, gigabytes, most of those will be left in their native language when they get translated, because they're accepted in the other languages because they don't have a replacement for them. So if you're trying to talk, you know, the advantages of using a particular computer, most of them have enough English understanding. The one gentleman that drove me in Russia because I needed to get to the domestic airport, and he was a systems analyst for the VA for the Russian army. He was able to speak enough English that we could communicate because of his use of computer languages.
You know, my son-in-law or my stepson is in Lithuania, and he said, you know, he's a computer guy. He said most of all the computer people around the world talk English, you know, so he's able to do business, you know, pretty much worldwide because of the computer type stuff. You know, amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's really because, you know, what kind of equipment are you going to use for network equipment? Are you going to be using a Cisco router or something? Guess what? They will translate stuff to other languages, but the command language remains English. They're not going to teach you different language. They're not going to say, oh, we're going to set the language to French, and now you have a completely different sentence structure to execute the command. No. The command language stays the same.
Well, he says that the Scandinavians are much more advanced with computers than most of the American stuff. I guess they're you know, way ahead of us in a lot of stuff, or what he says. You know.
Or they just think about things before they do them.
Yeah.
There are some areas in which Scandinavia is ahead, like cell phones. They've always been introducing new technologies ahead of us. That's largely a regulatory thing, though. The regulatory atmosphere, it's a lot easier when you're dealing with only a few million people as opposed to our large country with its large population.
I got news for you. Yeah, you might buy that Scandinavian phone, you might buy that Finnish company phone, but guess where they're made? China. They might have been designed in Finland or the US.
Like Nokia.
Having been working for a company which designed cellular telephones and was the father of the cellular telephone, yes, yeah, they all end up getting made in the place where it's cheapest.
Exactly. Which introduces yet another language thing.
Yes, it does.
If you ever have to figure out how your components work, now you have to learn Chinese. Mandarin.
Yeah. Well, at least enough that a lot of the Chinese spec sheets, they do have copies in English. I found that to be true. So you have some advantages there because sometimes the Chinese have to build it for the Japanese, and the Japanese prefer to have their specs in English.
And then it turns out to be almost English.
Yeah. It's like my drill press that I got from Harbor Freight many years ago when they only did mail order. Motor equipped with centrifugal switch. If motor do not go quick within 1 second, then turn off in no time. I always liked that. I thought, this is an Einsteinian impossibility. How can I turn it off in no time? Classic. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for attending. I'll try and figure out something for next month. Hopefully, I'll be available. I do get a stress test about the week before, so hopefully everything is worked out fine. And I'll be with you then. If not, you won't see a reminder from me.
Well, and I'm sure you'll do fine at the stress test, putting up with us. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that
Putting up with
works.
us, you'll do very well.
I did have a echocardiogram, and they informed me that I had at one point in time a coronary infarction, which means at some point in time I have had a heart attack, but I don't recall having it. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. I do remember having costochondritis once, which is inflammation of the chest muscle. And the doctor who looked at me says, "Oh, we already have a EKG on you. It's not, you wouldn't be a heart attack. Here, just take a couple of ibuprofens." It's just like this kid that I had just seen this week that also had that. You just have inflammation of the chest muscles after you tried to lift something that was too big. So I assumed that that's what it was, but it could have been something else.
Yeah, that's what this knee surgeon wants. He wants me to go to a cardiologist too and see EKG and see if I need a stress test.
They are going to do all of that good stuff to make sure that you are up to 100% before they put the anesthesiologist on you, before they put you out while they do this. So
But it's
my
funny.
wife had to go through that.
I had my rotator cuff down at the same, not the same doctor, but the same clinic. And they didn't do all this stuff for my rotator cuff. Just
You did a pre-op. You did a pre-op. But if there's any indication that something isn't right, then they go farther.
Sure.
I had the same thing with my rotator cuff. But that's what they do. When they do a hip, they're actually doing a lot more than making that little incision to tie the tendon back where it belongs. Because I had both this tendon and the biceps. I had to do both. But I did not have a stress test for that. They said, "Oh, you're fine. You know, we do an EKG. No, that's good enough." But if they have any suspect that there's something else, like they find something on an echocardiogram, then you'll do the other stuff. That's why I have a cardiologist now, and I get to go do a stress test because that's what he wants me to do. So, and they can put you on more drugs.
Yeah.
If you do a stress test, I just saw this thing on the most recent thing for my cardiologist. They say, before you have a stress test, you must not have caffeine for 24 hours in advance.
Oh, no.
If you take caffeine, that negates the test that they're trying to do, and they will charge you $250.
Good God. Nobody told me that.
Yeah, so don't take caffeine before your stress test. I don't know how I'm going to live without caffeine.
Yeah, me either.
I have 4 of these filled with caffeinated beverage in the morning. That gets me started.
Stay away from chocolate too.
That too. Chocolate, caffeine.
Not before the EKG, but before the stress test.
Before the stress test, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. No guanara either.
You know what?
Guanara, that's that drink that you can get from Brazil. It's
Oh.
like guanara and Coke. Yes, except that it's like having a shot of Starbucks. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, people. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to stop the recording and I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Bye.